Hello, my name is Stacey Dudley, and I am here to share with you my final presentation for Social Justice Rhetoric course. I would like to thank my mentor, Professor Gauthier, for sharing her knowledge and enthusiasm in civil rights and encouraging me in creative pursuits. Throughout the course, we study how activists shape their speeches with consideration of their audience, exigence, and purpose through strategies and tools such as appealing to emotion, logic, and ethics. The use of repetition, rhetorical questions, and references to historical documents to make a strong and powerful statement which contributed to reform, revolutionary, religious, and reactionary movements in the founding of America's social justice system. The activists that I am sharing about today strengthened the democracy, set legal rights, moral rights, and helped achieve better distributive outcomes. My exhibit consists of 4 acrylic paintings, each sized 11 by 14 inches. I intended to capture influential people who shaped America's social justice system in a way that is bright and exciting in the use of an array of colors in the backgrounds. My purpose was to exhibit the harmony that the activists intended to create through the flowy background. I portrayed the citizens' portraits using only black and white to symbolize the state that they were living in, where the country was divided and inequality was a major issue. My paintings connect to social justice issues of today as we strive to unify the people and end the parting between individuals. Experiencing and creating art is an individual experience which pulls people aside and asks them to reflect about why they have their views. This process consisted of reading articles, listening to speeches, and analyzing words of individual activists and learning about their personal lives and the hardships that they overcame. As I discovered more about their experiences, these people who influenced America's history came alive to me, and I felt compelled to create portraits of them. As I uncovered the division that this country was formed from, I selected my colors divisively, only choosing to work with black and white for their faces to express the transgressions, brutality, and ruthless individuals in our society they wrestled with in the development of our social justice system. For the background, I chose bright colors, showing the positivity that they launched us into. The background is significant as it emphasized the subject, creating a dynamic contrast, portraying how things are always changing. Studying art allows us to understand our human past, forming a basis of relationship to our present, which is one of humanity's most present activity. Art is found everywhere, and it influences us on a daily basis, whether we are aware of it or not. Colors and pictures hold the energy to affect our mood in a positive way, making us feel happier, more inspired to take action, and calmer. Through expressing ourselves in art, we can have a feeling of relief, allowing us to be healthy and free. Now I will share with you about the first advocate and abolitionist I studied, which is Maria Stewart. She was born in 1803 and died in 1879. She was one of the first African American women to speak publicly of abolition. She was an outsider that disrupted the people. She was a Quaker and was rooted in nonviolence, and she evangelized and was a bold and militant orator. In her speech titled Religion and the Principles of Morality, she shared about her trust in God and called daughters of Africa to wake up and rise. She focused on reform and education of children and pushed women to go to the legislative to urge for the right to vote. Here's a quote I included by her that says, "All the nations of the earth are crying out for liberty and equality. Away, away with tyranny and oppression." Next, we have Frederick Douglass, who was born in 1818 and passed away in 1895. He was the most efficient advocate of the slave population. Also an orator, newspaper publisher, abolitionist, and an author. He endured awful abuse from his masters, one extremely brutal by the name Mr. Covey, and was separated from his mother, Harriet Bailey, at only 12 months old. He recalls feeling as if his own mother was a stranger when he heard of her death. In his speech titled, "What to the Slave is the 4th of July," he shared his perspective on America's foundation, describing his experience as bleeding footsteps, woeful wails of fettered humanity on the way to slave markets where victims are sold like horses, sheep, and swine, knocked off to the highest bidder. Next is Albert Einstein, alive from 1879 to 1955. He was a physicist who developed the special and general theories of relativity and won the Nobel Prize for Physics in 1921 for his exploration of the photoelectric effect. He dodged a draft and dropped out of high school at age 16. He failed chemistry, French, and biology, but due to his exceptional math scores, he was able to get into a polytechnic on the condition that he finished his schooling. Some professors hated him due to his study of advanced subjects and cutting classes. Obsessed with the idea of what it would be like to travel alongside light, he formed the principle of relativity, publishing 4 papers, each altering the course of modern physics. He fled Germany as a magazine was published with his picture on the front that read, "Not yet hanged." He came to America and worked on the Manhattan Project and was increasingly drawn to the anti-war activities and advancing the civil rights of African Americans. His most significant efforts were in 1946 when a wave of anti-black violence swept over the United States African American World War II veterans and were attacked and lynched throughout America. The media ignored Einstein's speeches and writings on civil rights. He spoke at his historically black university and called racism a disease of white people. He worked with Paul Robeson, who was blacklisted because of his civil rights work, and they created an anti-lynching petition campaign. Einstein offered public encouragement to the National Association of the Advancement of Colored People. Next, we have Malcolm X, who was born in Nebraska in 1925 and died in New York in 1965. He advocated for the separation of African Americans from whites. His ideas and speeches contributed to the development of Black nationalist ideology and the Black Power movement. He organized temples for the Nation of Islam, New York, Philadelphia, Boston, and in the colonies of the South. He founded a newspaper called Muhammad Speaks. In his speech titled "The Ballot or the Bullet," he called the people to stop singing and start swinging. Though developing a some of their perspective of history in the United States, that being black meant you were born in jail, identified them as victims of America's so-called democracy. His critiques of Martin Luther King Jr. led to the intellectual foundations for the Black Power and consciousness movements in the United States in the late 1960s. Hostility after the death of President John F. Kennedy led to Malcolm's assassination. There are many more activists who we study that were important in the fight for equality, and I plan to paint such as Shirley Chisholm, Pauli Murray, Emmeline Pankhurst, Susan Anthony, and Sojourner Truth in the continuation of this exhibition. I will be sharing them on my art page on Instagram at Stacey Marie Art. Overall, art allows us to voice, express, and bring people and ideas together. Through art, we examine what it means to be human. We rise to the challenges of our normal life and see more clearly what needs to change. We are still experiencing a global pandemic and are engaging in racial injustice made visible through recent deaths and protests across the globe. I included a charcoal drawing I created of George Floyd, who was born in 1973 and was arrested on the alleged pass of a counterfeit $20 bill in Minneapolis, whose heart stopped while he was being restrained, and his death was a homicide that was caused by cardiopulmonary arrest, complicating law enforcement subdual, restraints, and compression on the neck. He had a daughter, and his occupation was a truck driver, rapper, and a security guard. I created the portrait of the lower part of his jacket as a scene of him walking down a road, with his shadow being that of an angel. Through art making, we process our experiences, and it helps us to express how we understand the world around us. Art makes a difference in how we live our lives, allowing us to communicate from afar, generate positivity, and amplify messages. I hope you enjoyed my exhibit.